All right, so I'm gonna go back to lesson. There we go. All right, so now we can actually write some code, right? Because we want to write some code, right? We like doing stuff. Okay, so real quick, I just have pandas. I'm using SQLite 3 here. So SQLite 3 should be installed. Make sure you have, if you haven't gone through this already, make sure you do the source activate learn environment. You could, of course, install this through Conda and whatnot. But if you just do that, it'll make sure it'll run. So I'm just going to import this guy. Oh, I don't know if you guys know this. You can run some bash commands, like shell commands in the Jupyter Notebook. You guys know about this? So I can run ls, which would be list your things in that file, so or in that directory. You can see here, advanced, all these different things. I'm going to be using this database here, not this database. I need to get rid of this. Where is it? Oh, there it is, data.sqlite. Okay. You can also run other commands like this, like with an exclamation mark. And you can see here that runs just like the terminal. Okay. Cool. So we're going to use SQLite. We're going to connect our SQLite. So right here, making this connection, and we use SQLite3.connect. And in this case, we actually have a file, which is going to be data.sqlite. Note that technically you might connect to a SQL server, maybe through the internet or through the intranet. So it could be something that's on the network. It can be something that actually your laptop is running right then and there. It can also be completely somewhere else. So this might be replaced with, you know, a URL and stuff like that. And my suggestion is if you come across those things, you ask someone or you look it up to basically say, hey, how do you connect this? You can see here, this is the database. The database might have different things, like URI is basically, think like URL, okay? But since we just have a file, we're just gonna run this guy. I think I have to actually run this, good. So we have our cursor, our connection. Now we're gonna go ahead, oops, go ahead and clear out all this stuff. Output clear, okay. Let's still work out, good, okay. Sorry, I did a test run. All right, so we have our connection. Note this connection right here basically is an object itself, like we're holding on to. It's like, oh, we have this connection here. Imagine like the wire that's connected to our database. And then this cursor is kind of like, I imagine like a placeholder. It's kind of like putting your finger, like when you're reading, you know, on like a paragraph or whatever, you're keeping your finger on this, like, you know, where it is in the database. That's kind of like what your cursor is. You can also think of your cursor, this is my little metaphor, I don't know if it's the best thing, but you imagine your server's like downtown and you're like, all right, like, you know, hey, new intern, go ahead, I need you to, like, you write down some stuff, like give this over to the, you know, the server downtown. And the little intern goes, okay, you know, gets on their bike and they go ride downtown. They ask the servers, hey, I need this stuff from the boss, you know, the boss goes, the server looks at it like, okay, cool. And then gives you like a package, gives this little cursor the package, and the cursor kind of brings it back. That's also a way you can kind of think of the cursor. So sometimes you get these weird parts, and if you think of it, it's like, oh, it's just the thing that's keeping place of like what's being sent back and forth. I don't know if that helps, but that's kind of the way I think of it. My mind's kind of weird. All right, so we have our query command right here. So note that it's just a string. So you can see here, select name from SQLite master, where type table. Okay, I'm not going through the whole thing. This right here is a really useful command for SQLite because this will actually tell you about all the different tables that are in the database. However, note that not if you have a different schema, a different kind of structure, right? This might not work. So you might have to make sure you ask like, hey, how can I look up this specific structure? So just know this. But we have our query right here. I have my result is equal to cursor, right? He's going to basically send everything through, do an execute on the query, and then this will do .fetch all. So this .fetch all, basically, this is kind of like the package, like the cursor comes in, executes that query that's written down, they bring it back a package. The fetch all is kind of like opening up the package. Okay, so we get these results and we can actually see the results. In this case, it's since everything is always sent in tuples, since there's only one element in here, just know that's common, basically saying, oh, there's just one element. But it's order details, payments, offices, customers, orders, product lines, products, employees. This is just the different tables, okay? If I want to just, the first one, you can see here, I get order details, okay? I can also like just say like table names. Now I have this nice, pretty little list of order names with our list comprehension. All right, everyone follow me so far? Cool, all right, I won't go too much into like this select structure. I'm assuming that you guys have seen this already. All right, so let's go right into it. So now say select everything from the employees table just to get a feel for it. So I'm going to select star from employees, which is a table, okay? And then I'm going to limit 5, okay? Note that I'm putting this all in one line. SQL does not care about white space. You could put as much spaces as you want in between words and stuff like that, and it'll work perfectly fine. Versus Python, as you probably probably noticed is Python likes the space very specific, right? It doesn't like it when you do weird things. Okay, but you can see here, this will get all the results for all those columns, but just 5 results. So you can see here, each one of these guys is a result. So you can see here, we have 102 or 1002, Murphy, Diane, X5800, an email looking thing, and then the number 1, and then looks like a blank thing right here. So basically this is my first result. Oh, sorry, here's my first result. There's also the president. Second result, third result, oops, fourth result, and fifth result. There we go. So you can see here, this because I'm limiting it for 5. But you can see here, this is each of the columns. Now the problem is, as you guys probably guess, what the heck is 1102? I have no idea, right? So this is where it might be useful to actually pull up the column name or know what the structure is ahead of time. So we're going to add some little more complexity, just kind of get an idea. So like I mentioned, I don't like writing queries, I don't like writing this whole long thing where I'm doing like query cursor.execute results.fetch all display results. So you can see here me running this through. So annoying. Like I have to type if I type all this out, it's kind of annoying. I can, for example, get the actual description of what these things are. So cursor.description, it can tell me basically these things are the columns themselves. Note that you'll get like this tuple of like the first name and then column none. I honestly don't know why SQL like this. I'm sure there's a reason why. But for the most part, you can kind of ignore this and just say, I'm just getting the first result of this tuple, okay, to get the column name. So each of these things is the office number, the city, phone, address line 1, address line 2, state, country, postal code, territory. Okay, all makes sense so far? So I'm like, this is annoying. Like imagine like trying to do this every single time you query a new table. And then imagine trying to get this combined into there, it's just a whole mess. So it's gotta be a better way. And there is, because we have functions, right? Because we have Python. So you can write like little functions like this that work well for you. For example, I have like SQL with columns. I have the query. I pass in the cursor. Note that it's just saying the default is cursor. It's going to give me full results with columns. So I get the result equals cursor.execute query.fetch all, and then get the columns. So note that basically this is a list comprehension. Technically, it's a tuple comprehension, but I'm getting all the column names. And then I'm going to combine this with the full result. So I actually have the column names along with the full result, and I can actually see the full result. So now I have this new function. So all I have to do now is like with SQL with calls, I'm just passing in the query, and I just run this guy. And now I have in results, and now I have this guy. So I can see all the column names. And then I have each of the results, which is kind of nice. I didn't have to type all it now. If I just change this up, like, oh, what if I just want, one thing, or if I want it from a different table or whatever, I can just change this query directly and get new results versus like going through, all of this stuff and then displaying and stuff like that. Again, I'm a little lazy, but it helps. So we're like, okay, cool. Also, well, okay, I have this description here. I can get these items. That's all right, but I kind of want them all together. And also, it would be nice to have it in a data frame, right? Since we're using pandas. So I actually have this function here. I can do SQL with calls, which I defined earlier, get the query or get the results from the query, and then I can return a data frame with the column results and the data itself. So if I do this now I have beautiful, beautiful data frame of like all my information. And all I can do now is just like I said, you can just pass in the query. You don't have to do anything extra. So these are kind of things that you might do, to kind of speed up your process, especially when you're exploring and things like this. I highly recommend doing something like this, kind of keeping things a little condensed. That way you don't have to like write the same stuff over and over. And half the time you're just copying and pasting the same thing and just changing one, the query. So this can be really useful. Okay, everyone get that so far?
Yeah. There's a dot query function that Panda offers. It's in what section? Using SQL with pandas. That's also like a short way of doing running queries, right? That works.
Yeah, you could do it too. Whatever. That's the thing too. Is like you use whatever is a good workflow for you. So if you find that works well for you, like awesome, just keep using that. And I would say try to keep it as clean as possible too. Cool. Thanks for adding that in. All right. So one thing I'll kind of say is that why don't we just load the full results directly into a data frame? Like let's say we say, oh, like for example, later on we're going to do like select star or select certain columns and then where something is true. Why don't we just do like select star from employees, load the whole table directly into a data frame? Why might that be a bad idea? I guess. What if the table is like a billion records big. Is that a good idea still?
It would just take forever and use up a lot of processing power.
Yeah, so one is like, Pandas has to keep it in like its memory, right? So one is like, it's going to take up a lot of memory. But another thing too is if it's a billion and it's like, let's say on another, like on a server, either through the internet or through the intranet, right? And you ask, give me 1 billion results, and you pass in all those results in there. You not only ones like maybe your computer can handle it, but maybe the network basically can't handle it, or it's going to take a long time to get the full results all the way through, going through. If you're through the internet, it kind of stinks for you because you're like, oh, means like I'm taking a long time. But imagine if you're in the business office, right? And you're taking up all the bandwidth, basically trying to pull the data, people aren't gonna be very happy with you, right? Or at least, they'll probably, if IT's worth their salt, they'll probably basically try to restrict how much data you're pulling through. And says, hey, you've been pulling this stuff for the past like 3 hours, like what's up? So again, this is where like if you can do SQL to do all the work, then it's a lot better. However, I do know people will tend to try to do this, like do these kind of queries when like small databases, because for the most part, people are just used to using pandas. So you'll probably do this, but there are a lot of advantage if you can make the SQL server do all the work for you. Okay, cool. Little note to have. All right. Stop me if you guys have any questions too, okay? So let's kind of go into a little more complexity, right? Since it's specific results in order from a query. So we here have the employees table, right? And this time, if you notice, when we pull this up, we get employee number, last name, first name. Let's say I want those results. I want it first name, last name, position. And note that job title here, I don't really want job title. I want to call it position. So I can use this aliasing. So note that I'm using the word as here, as, right? To basically say, oh, select first name, which is going to be like the column name, as some, what's it called? Some thing that we can call it. So basically that will appear as the column name. Note that you can technically just take this out. So note that you can just do it like first name and then just like the name of whatever you want. Note that you also don't have to have it in quotation marks. I have it in quotation marks because I have a space in between. So if I wanted, for example, to do something that just like first, I could have gone like this. Okay, that would still work. Okay, so one thing I'll say though is that I personally tend to put in my keywords like aliasing, like as, in there, just because it makes it really clear and obvious for anyone looking at it later on, including myself. This is kind of a style I notice a lot of people don't do this, especially, going through, and I totally understand it because I'll do that when I'm quickly exploring. But I'll say, like, if you're writing this stuff, it's really useful to just make sure it's really explicit because you're less likely to come up with mistakes. This also, so you notice, I have it on 2 separate lines, select, and then I indented first name, last name, job title, email. You technically don't have to indent. You could just write this as one full line. Again, I say these are better, like a lot easier to read this through, and it's a lot easier to kind of pick out stuff. Also, it's a lot easier to like get rid of stuff. Like, oh, I want to get rid of this part. Valid query still, versus like trying to like get that specific part and stuff. And in some cases too, like if you're writing in the SQL query, you can actually comment out a specific line, and you don't have to like worry about this. So something to kind of be aware of. There's also little things too, but I won't talk about. Well, okay. One thing you can do, which you'll sometimes see, only like I don't know, true SQL badasses do this, is that you would put like a comma in front like this instead of at the end, which seems kind of weird looking at first. But the reason why some people will do this is that it's a lot easier to comment this out. So like, for example, in a comment, does anyone know what a comment looks like in SQL? This won't work in here in this case, but like technically, it's just 2 dashes is a comment. And so that's a comment that says, oh, comment out that line. So this can be useful. However, I will note that I'm going to run this so you guys can see it. You see, it does work, right? So you can see first, last name, position, stuff like this. I believe, okay, some places, if I comment this out, I'll see if this works. I think it's going to give us an error. No, okay. Oh, wow. I didn't know that. Okay, that's good to know. Some places, they won't let you do this because it'll read it in as a full straight line. And if you read this as a full straight line, it comments out all of this. But you can see here is that this actually commented out just the job title and just kept an email. So what's nice is that if you have this, as long as the first one's in there, you can comment out parts and you don't have to worry about, having not work. If you have it instead, like, for example, I can get rid of this last one and it would run too. If you had it at the end, it means you just can't get rid of the end. Like, it means you have to like kind of manipulate things. And for example, if you start getting like, let's say, there we go. One more comma. If you instead comment out like this, right? You're like, okay, that still runs. But if you start commenting out things like, if you comment out the end one and then you forget, you'll say, hey, whoa, whoa, what's going on? Because you ended with a comment at the very end. So things to consider. Okay, cool. That was kind of my little sidetrack, but can kind of be helpful. Yeah, so that's a pretty common query. This is a probably as simple as you can go without, you know, getting specific ones that get certain order and stuff like this. One thing to note when you do a SQL query, all the results are always the same thing as if it was a SQL table. Okay, so it's kind of interesting. We'll talk about this maybe in subqueries, but like one thing that you're basically doing is that you can think of every time you get a select these things, you're basically getting a new SQL table where basically you have these column names and then these results. Does that make sense to people? Okay.